everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another video on this lovely sunny day. We're going to be talking about CPI and inflation, everybody's favorite topic. What's going on with inflation? So I'm filming this video on February 21st. On February 20th, January's inflation data came out. So we're going to be going over what the data release says, what Bank of Canada says is going on, and then drive some observations and opinions from this data and where we're going in the future. So 2.9% is the amount inflation rose year over year from January of 2023 to January of 2024. This is the first time CPI has been under 3% since June of 2023, where it was at 2.8%. But before June of 2023, the last time we had CPI under 3% year over year was March of 2021. We're talking almost 3 years ago. So this is a big deal to be under 3%, especially considering that shelter costs are still the driving factor of CPI being so high. This 2.9% figure was following a December figure, which was 3.4%. CPI was higher in December than a lot of people expected, especially myself, which kind of brought some uncertainty and worry in the market, thinking that, oh, inflation's still high again. We're almost at 3.5%. Bank of Canada is going to hold off on rate cuts longer and longer and longer. They may actually hike, some people thought. So seeing this number down at 2.9% is definitely bringing some more ease into the market following that December figure. Gas is down 4% year over year. Gas has actually declined for 5 months in a row. The reason that gas is down 4% is the base year effect. Last January, gasoline prices were elevated due to refineries closing and a bunch of other issues happening. So that's why we see the gas numbers declined a little bit. If we're taking CPI without gasoline, we're at 3.2%. But obviously gasoline is a big portion of CPI. So taking, when we judge CPI less this, then, we're not getting a true CPI because we want to really factor in the full basket of goods. CPI actually fell on a month over month seasonally adjusted basis from December to January by 0.1%. This is the first time since May of 2020 that we've seen CPI fall on a month over month basis. So we go back to CPI being under 3% for the first time since June of 23 and then back to March of 21. So this is something that hasn't happened in a long time, which is a great indicator for if this trend continues. Obviously, this is only 1 month. We could go to February data and we could be back in the same places where we were in December. Oh, inflation's elevated again. Rate cuts are going to be pushed out farther, which may happen. But if this trend continues, we're on a good path for inflation being under control and rate cuts potentially happening later this year. Quick note on groceries. They're still up 3.4% year over year. They were up 4.7% December year over year, so decreasing, but still not where we'd really like to see groceries. Like, grocery prices have a huge impact on these households who are struggling now, and they're up 3.4% from an already elevated rate in January of 2023. You'd like to see groceries a little bit lower. But to shelter cost, shelter is the big outlier here. We're seeing shelter costs on a year over year basis still elevated at 6.2% increase, 0.3% month over month as well. So electricity is up about 11%, gas is down about 16%, water's pretty flat. So we can say utilities are a bit of a wash, but we've got home insurance costs and mortgage insurance costs up by 7.7% year over year. We've got rent prices up 7.9% year over year. And the big figure here, mortgage interest costs up 27.4%. So obviously shelter having a huge impact on this CPI because this is really the outlier. Like, we've seen declines in a lot of other spaces, things being flat in other spaces under control, but shelter still out of control. Obviously, there's been talk around the industry and in media lately about, this is counterintuitive. Bank of Canada won't cut rates because they see inflation still elevated, but inflation's elevated because mortgage interest cost is so high, because rent costs are so high, which obviously stems from mortgage interest costs and carrying costs and home insurance costs being high, because those are passed along to the renter. So a little counterintuitive, and I've spoke about this before, but really their hands are kind of tied, because like the market's still going like pretty decent right now without rate cuts. So they feel that if they cut rates, that the market will then get out of control. You know, house prices will go up, people start spending money again, speculating, and it won't be good for the economy. So they really need to hold firm. That's why they're not announcing when they're going to cut rates, because they need to keep people kind of uncertain about what's going on. So that's the big outlier, shelter costs. So we'll head over here and do a quick loom of this Bank of Canada Consumer Price Index monthly percentage of change. This is the shelter component. So we see shelter, like I said, up 6.2% year over year. Rents up 7.9%. Mortgage interest cost 27.4%. Like I spoke about, utilities, electricity up 11%, gas down, water kind of flat. I mean, still up 4%, like flat compared to the other ones. But you can see almost all of these figures are still elevated, besides gas and fuel, which, like I spoke about gasoline before, it was a base year effect with refineries shutting down. So you're kind of squeezed on the supply of that. The only other thing we see down is homeowners' replacement costs. So maybe seeing construction materials come down a little bit too. And I know contractors aren't as busy now, so these construction costs may have a case to go down in the future. If we flip over to this table, 5 of 8 CPI components decelerate in January. So this is a little table on what's going on. So we saw food decelerate, shelter accelerate from already elevated levels, right? Food, like I said, was at 4.7. Now we're at 3.4. Shelter increased again at 6.2%. Last month it was 6%. This household operations, furnishings, equipment, clothing and footwear, I mean, these are like in the negative and under 2%, so not really worried about that. Transportation decelerated, health and personal care flat, recreation decelerated, alcohol and beverage decelerated. So really, again, like I spoke about, shelter here is the huge factor in what's really keeping CPI at an elevated rate. So there's a quick overview of our January 2023 inflation data that was released by Bank of Canada yesterday. So all in all, good, again, quote unquote, good release and numbers by Bank of Canada. This is probably encouraging for consumers, encouraging for the public, encouraging for Bank of Canada to say, okay, we've got these things under control. You know, we've got shelter costs still elevated, but everything else seems to be coming kind of in line to close to where we want it. Definitely a case for Bank of Canada now to ease rates, maybe in the summer and fall, probably not in the spring of 2024, but who knows, depending on what's going on with the data in the coming months. As always, hopefully you found this video informative, got some value out of it. We'll see you next week for a new video. Thanks again for watching.